I'm Bella McGoldrick, and I am an artist. I work with colored pencil to create photorealistic drawings.
Hello, I'm Chris Stafford, and this is Art, the podcast where we get up close and personal as we get to know women from around the world of visual arts. This is Season 2, Episode 44. My guest this week is the New Zealand-Australian photorealistic artist Bella McGoldrick. Bella says her intention is first to present the subjects to which she's had a connection, and secondly, to bring a connection between those subjects and the viewer, to take them back to a place, to a time, to a taste, or even a smell. Bella was born in Wellington, New Zealand in 1993, the youngest of three girls to parents Mel McGoldrick and Mark O'Sullivan. When Bella was just 7 years old, the family moved to Melbourne in search of a new life. Bella developed an interest in art from an early age, and her talent soon became apparent when she started taking commissions for portrait drawings as a teenager. But it was her interest in fashion design that guided her career, and she graduated from the Royal Melbourne Institute of Technology with a Bachelor of Fashion Design degree. As a student, Bella spent time in Paris, surviving on a minimal budget until she sold her first artwork, and then took off for a tour of Europe before returning to school in Melbourne. Her lust for travel became her focal point, and with her heart set on New York, she made her way to the Big Apple, finding work as an intern in the fashion industry. In the meantime, Bella continued to take commissions for her art, and with a new boyfriend, who later became her husband, they spent time in London before moving to Colorado. And it was from there that Bella was deported from the US, and with her now fiancé travelled around until finally returning to Australia. Now, as an established and sought-after artist, Bella is settled in Byron Bay with her husband Tyler and twin boys Rome and Ruby. Bella, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Chris. I'm very excited to be here.
Well, I'm thrilled to have you here. I got introduced to your work through another guest on the podcast, and taking a look at what you do, I think I told you, I have a wry smile when I look at your work and I see new work because it's just so cool. It's so cool.
Thank you. I'm glad. I do like to have a bit of fun with it and not take myself too seriously. So I hope there's like a bit of tongue in cheek can be found.
Yes, it's kind of a little bit sort of whimsical as well, isn't it?
Yeah. I play with different ideas of often really interested in hedonism and desire and consumerism and consumption. So, yeah, kind of playing on those themes a lot. They seem to come back. It's not necessarily it has to be there, but I find it often that those are the themes that come back.
Now, I read that your intention is to present your work and the subjects to which you have a connection, and then most importantly to hopefully bring a connection between those subjects and the viewer, taking them back to a time, to a place, to a taste, maybe a smell, a memory that they've once had. Give us examples of how you achieved that, how you feel that you've achieved that when you stand back and look at your work.
Yeah, definitely. It's a really fun conversation to have with the viewers and the buyers of my work, because I pick things that I feel connected with, or even, so it's changed a little bit. Like I used to do a lot more of, I'd go to flea markets and go to antique stores and then go to pawn shops. So like when I was living in the US, especially around, like Nevada and Reno and places like that, and go to pawn shops. And so maybe I didn't have a connection with these items that I would find, but I could see that they were clearly had been used and had been loved. And so I was fascinated by that story. And so often the stuff that I draw is old and used, and you can kind of see these wear marks on it. And I'm just fascinated by who used these items, especially if they're throwaway items, like a some of my favorite pieces are like there's a slots cup, like a paper cup that would collect the coins from a slot machine in Vegas. And you can see it's all brown. And like, I don't think anybody would have loved the cup. I mean, it was a means to an end. It was to collect the money. But I love the idea of like somebody holding this and like what was their story. So there's that part of my work. And then there's the other part, which lately I've been doing a lot of food and the presentation of food and plates and like kitchen items and stuff like that. And these are things that I really connect with and like have a love for. And then it's interesting to see how they connect with other people, or how, other people find like they have memories tied to these things. And sometimes they're standalone. Sometimes I think they don't need to be touched at all. So like a baguette, I did a French collection and I was like, the baguette needs nothing. It's perfect. It's as it should be. It's as God would have wanted. And it's just a plain baguette, and I'll leave it at that and like honor it like that. And then other times I want to play with things, and I did an Italian collection, and this was almost like a table setting where I had some glasses with sparkling water and bread and nougat and napkins. And it really kind of, that's, I guess, going to what you were saying with a taste or a smell. Like, can you smell the Italian countryside when you're looking at this? And can you imagine you breaking the bread? Or have you had a dinner like this? Or where does that take you? So yeah, it's a bit of a conversation. Sometimes it's things I am wondering about the story behind them, and sometimes it's things I've lived, and then people connect with it, even if the standalone baguette, then people are like, oh my goodness, like my time in France, or I'm obsessed with bread, or I bake bread, or whatever. It's all these different stories, and it can mean something. It's like I have heroed this subject that is really important in somebody else's life as well. So they're like, I've always loved tiramisu, let's say, which I just finished a tiramisu. My nonna made it, and I'm it's so close to my heart. And now me as the artist, I have kind of put it on this page and like declared that it's something special, something worthy to look at and to frame and hold in your house.
I'm almost looking for the teeth marks. Is that the kind of impression you want to leave?
Oh, definitely. Yes. Especially when it's butter. If I have butter on bread, there should be teeth marks on the butter. Yes.
Were you that child that played with drawings and was a little bit mischievous, maybe, with your art when you were younger?
Yeah, definitely. Yes. I've always been drawing, and yeah, I would stick them. I used to draw people. So that's where I started. It was always people. I studied fashion design. So I loved like the body and putting clothing on it and faces and portraiture. So I used to, always stick my drawings all over the windows, just like begging for somebody to compliment them, really. Like, look at my work. And then I studied fashion design, and then I started doing these fashion illustration caricatures. So they were, there's lots of them around at the moment, but they were like these, elongated, glamorous fashion illustrations. And then the face would look exactly like whoever was commissioning the drawing. So they became this kind of hot trend for a while when I was living in Melbourne, mainly for like private school girls for their 18th or 21st. And it was a great trend because somebody would buy one, and then like their whole friendship group would need to have one as well. So I was making a bit of bank from this. And I had the likeness. I could get like the face to look exactly like the person who was ordering it. And then I'd make their body look like some fashion model. And then I think I just got a bit sick of it. The clientele moved from the private school girls to like the private school girls' parents. And I was like, okay, I think this has maybe gone to the end of its lifespan. And that's when I started just drawing, I guess, still life. I call it modern still life because there's just things around me that I started drawing, and then it's gone from there. And I've never gone back to the portraiture or to the figures. I like subjects that are still.
Well, you seem to have mastered the art, literally, no pun intended. But you didn't inherit any of this, Bella. You were saying you don't have any artists in the family.
Not really. Definitely a creative family, but more in, I guess, like in theater. My older sister, she was always singing and performing, and that is more in my mother's side of the family, lots of performers, but not so much artists, like fine artists.
What did your parents, Mark and Mel, what did they do?
So they were business owners. My mum owned a camera store in New Zealand back when cameras were going crazy. So she did that for a long time. And then my dad started working in the business, and then we all moved over to Australia, and my mum has been like a consultant, trainer, teacher since we moved to Australia. And yeah, my dad worked in cameras for a little longer and some retail. And so now my dad is back in New Zealand and my mum is in Melbourne.
And you were born in Wellington, as I was reminded when I was in what we would call Wellington. It was pronounced Wellington.
With that Kiwi accent. Yes,
which I'm not doing very well, but you were born in 1993, and then you say you moved. I think as a 7-year-old, you moved west to Australia. What were your earliest memories then?
We had a huge family house with lots of family. So my mum is one of 8 and my dad is one of 7. So lots of cousins and family around, and that was kind of my memories of it. And I just loved that house. And then moving to Australia, yeah, I do. It's funny. I've got 2 older sisters and they're 4 and 8 years older than me. And they both call themselves Kiwi and I call myself Australian. I think I was at the age where I feel much more Australian than a New Zealander because of when I moved. So Australia feels more formative for me, for sure.
But let's go back to your parents and your grandparents, because often we bond with grandparents. Did you have that because you left New Zealand so young?
Well, definitely my grandmother, who we called Mama, she just passed last year, but I was extremely close to her. And she's like, I've just made a book and the dedication is to her because I think she was like my number 1 fan forever. And she actually had one of my earlier, I think must have been 13 or something. I did this I always made the largest artworks, which to my parents' chagrin, because they're like, can you just make something small and we can put it up? Anyway, I made this huge pastel drawing. It was a horse and a cat in the bed. It was meant to be surrealism. And she had that on her mantelpiece forever until she passed. It was the pride and joy of her house. So I think she gave me maybe a belief that my work was worthy to be on walls, something like that. Yeah, she's amazing. So that's my mother's mother.
And what did your grandparents do on both sides? Where did they come from? Did they migrate from the UK?
Well, on my dad's side is Irish. So my dad's last name is O'Sullivan. And then my mother's side, I think is maybe also Irish. It's McGoldrick. And my grandfather on my mother's side was a dentist. So he raised him and my grandma, Mama, they raised 8 children. And then my dad's side were farmers. So they had a big family farm, and he has 6 brothers that all worked on the family farm. And then my dad was the one that was he was the youngest, and he left to the city. So he became the soft one of the family, probably because we weren't living on the farm, and we were the city girls.
You became city slickers then?
Yeah.
And so what caused the move to Australia? What was that about?
Just a change, which is interesting because, people would always ask us, why did you move? What was the reason? And my parents just wanted to try something new, which was definitely instilled into my sisters and I, because we've all lived overseas, and we've actually all got foreign partners, which again is difficult for my mother because she's like, okay, come home now. And I think we all kind of have the notion of home can kind of be anywhere, which they they taught us at that and moving over to Australia. And then, we've all taken it. So we've all moved all over the world. My oldest sister is back in New Zealand now, but my other sister is in London, has been for over 10 years. And I just moved back to Australia last year. So I've been in the US for like 8 years.
Which part of Melbourne did you move to then as a child?
To Brighton at that time. And we moved around a bunch since, but that was, where we landed.
And how was that for the young Bella then? Because new school, new neighbourhood, new friends, everything was different for you. What were your early memories of that transition?
Oh, yeah, I loved it. I loved that everybody thought my accent was interesting. So that was like, I already had like built-in attention because people would say, oh, say fish and chips. And, like, what do you call an esky or a chili bin or whatever, all those words. So yeah, I loved it. And I think I was at the age, I just made new friends and I didn't really keep in touch with my friends from New Zealand, but, we also went on a trip. It was like as we moved, we went on this like large trip to America and to England and Ireland and Hawaii is part of America, but we did this like, I think maybe it was a 6-week trip as a whole family before we landed. And that was just like the coolest thing for me. That was crazy to see. We went to Disneyland, which blew my socks off. And we went to London and Buckingham Palace and Paris. And so I think that was, I don't know whether they did that. I'm sure they just wanted to do that themselves, but maybe that was to sweeten the deal of moving. And I was kind of like, okay, cool, blow home. Let's go traveling and find a new home, which maybe is instilled in me now of like how much I love traveling and seeing the world.
Yeah, you've had itchy feet all your life, haven't you? Yes.
And it's part due to circumstance, part due to my wishes to be traveling, but definitely part of it is that I have been like, previous to living in Australia, I'd been like on one visa to another to try and make it work in the US for the whole time I was there. So it was like in and out. Where's my home now? So it feels actually really good for the first time in a long time to be feeling settled.
We're going to talk more about your wanderlust because that will lead us to the book that you've just published. But I want to go back to those early childhood days, and I'm wondering what your interests were. Were your parents taking you to galleries and museums as part of all this travel?
Yeah, definitely. In Paris, I just found them boring mostly to be 7 and going through the Louvre and like another room. But I loved being in the new city and walking around the streets and just being in the culture. And one of our musts was like, if we go to Paris, we have to go to a posh restaurant. Like, it's just the only thing I want to do is go to a posh restaurant. My oldest sister and I were like, that's all we want. And so, I don't even know where we went, but we put on feather boas and just thought we were just the bee's knees because we were in a posh restaurant in Paris. So I definitely grew up going to galleries, and my parents were into music and art and culture. And that became more significant when I moved to Melbourne, and my mum was really supportive of going to see like whatever new exhibits were showing. But yeah, in Europe, I found it just too many paintings, which honestly still, when I go, I'm like, okay, I'm good. I've filled up my cup. That's too many. So it's a lot.
Who was impressing you in terms of the artists that you were being exposed to? What were the early influences, do you think, for your artwork?
Oh, well, definitely. And the one that I always go back to, because it just is very strong for me, was in Melbourne. There was a whole like exhibit of Salvador Dali at the National Art Gallery or the National Gallery Victoria, the NGV. And that, still he is like one of my favorite artists. And I remember just staring for for like such a long time, staring at the detail in his work and how he could make it. This is what always fascinated me with like these paintings when I was younger. It's like I would go really, really close, be like, how does he make it look real? So like this was definitely influential on me now. And like he has this artwork that's the size of a matchbox, and you have to kind of go really close. I think there might even be like magnifying glass to see it. And he painted it with a single haired brush. And I would just like keep trying to push people away and look up close to it, be like, how did he do it? Like this, it looks so real, and trying to see the brush strokes that he used to make these things look real and then make them look smooth. And there was no brush strokes. So how do I like see how he's done it when I can't see the brush strokes? And also in the exhibit, they had a lot of his like earlier sketches, or his sketches that would then turn into the paintings. And at that stage, I was probably drawing and doing these sketches, not so much oil painting, but I was like, maybe what if my sketches could be viewed one day, or maybe if I keep sketching, like I think I could do that sort of sketch if I keep doing that, or could I do the painting like he did it? So that, he still, if it was any exhibit that's ever influenced me, it was that one. I think I went back like 3 times or something, and then I made a painting. Then I was like, okay, I'm going to get into oil painting, and I made a painting that basically looks exactly like his. My mum still has it on her wall, and if you looked at it, you'd be like, oh, it looks like you've tried to do a Salvador Dali painting. But it wasn't too bad. It wasn't too bad, and so that definitely was a big influence on me.
So was it around that time then that you were thinking, this is what I want to do, this is who I am?
I think so. And I always was good at it. So I like to do things that I'm good at and not do things that I'm not good at. I've always been like that. So like sports, I really tried my hand, and I wasn't that great at it. Whereas in the art room, I definitely have been good at it. And so I love to do it. And then I was always doing art. And then at the end of high school, I did art throughout my whole high school and loved it and excelled in it. And then I also was doing like textile design, and that's when I was going to go to like art school or fashion school. And my thoughts was, well, I'll go to fashion school because there's much more job opportunities after you graduate from that. There's like, whereas if I just go to art school, you can basically just become an artist or, a curator or an art historian. And really, what are the odds of that? Which is kind of funny in hindsight, because then I couldn't get a job being a fashion designer. So I went back to just becoming an artist. But I do think if I went to art school, as in higher education, I don't think I would be an artist, because I think I've gone quite against like the standard career trajectory for an artist, and I'm not with a gallery, I'm independent, and I think my art is probably more commercially viable than if I went to art school, what my work would look like. I think because, well, it's the same with fashion school. Like, they kind of like go deeper. We want it more conceptual. No, start again, more conceptual. And I think that's great as a way of learning and a way of exploring. But I think for making a living, that makes it really hard to be like more conceptual, and then the larger audience doesn't get it. Whereas I think because I didn't go to school, I missed all that. So I didn't go deeper and deeper. I just was like, oh, I'm quite good at this, and this has an appeal, and I'm going to go with it.
You mentioned about selling your work, Bella. I'm wondering if you were still in high school when you were starting to sell pieces. People were paying attention to how talented you were and willing to pay money for it.
Yes, and it did start with those like figurative portraits, or that, the fashion illustration portraits. So they were kind of cartoon-like, and it started, I would do them for friends, for birthday gifts, and then friends of friends would want them, and then I would, start selling them. And
the fashion, though, at what point were you thinking, well, I'm going to go and study fashion, because you went to the Royal Melbourne Institute of Technology for that, to get your bachelor's.
Yes.
Was that a given? Were your parents encouraging you to do that, or how did that decision come about to take that course?
Yeah, they were always, I mean, they were supportive of whatever I wanted to do. I loved school. I was really into school. So they didn't really have to kind of pressure me or sway me to do anything. I was just really keen to study. So that course was like a fantastic course, like the best one in Australia to be doing fashion design. And I got accepted into that one. And I had been, I guess, half the things I was successful in high school was fashion design and art and studio art. So it was kind of a toss up. I didn't get into the best school for fine arts that I tried to, and I did get into the best school for the fashion design. So that was the decision made up for me. And I just went straight out of high school. And
high school, was that Parsons, Paris?
No, high school was in Melbourne. It was Star of the Sea College. Parsons, Paris was, I did a semester abroad in Paris during my degree.
And so what kind of student, you said you were a good scholar, but what else did you get up to in college? I want to get to know what Bella did when you were not being studious, and were you into dating and music and dance?
Yes, yeah, into dating, into partying for sure. We started partying pretty young, like 16. We were going to clubs with fake IDs. So yeah, definitely. I think the first year of university was not my best because I just wanted to party really and, hang out with friends. And I think I had a boyfriend at that stage. And then I was just like dying from I'd say middle of high school. I was like, I am moving to New York. I'm moving. That's where I want to be. I'm going to be a fashion designer in New York. And I remember telling my mom, like, any job I ever get has to be progression in my career. Like, I'm not going to do ho-jum jobs. I want a successful career in fashion design. And I was like very laser focused on that, as well as also having a really good time on the weekends. But so I was like, I'm going to New York. So then when I started university, I was like, okay, I want to go do exchange in New York. And I wanted to go to Parsons, and I couldn't get into Parsons. So I went to Parsons, and then again, I got accepted into Parsons Paris. And so that was the decision made up for me. But that was my second option. I really wanted to go to New York. So then I went to Paris, and that just like changed my whole view of life. Like living in that city was so incredible, and it just opened my eyes to like how a place can affect you. I never knew that before. Well, I watched a lot of Sex and the City, which is probably unsurprising, which is probably why I wanted to move to New York. And I always thought that was a weird title, that it was like, why would a city be so important? And it wasn't until I got to Paris that I was like, oh, the place that you live has such a huge effect on the creativity, your like the way in which you can be in the world, and the way in which my world just expanded, the possibilities expanded. And I was just like in love with how I felt in Paris. I was also so broke, like crazy broke in Paris. I mean, I'd have to go to dinner and just like eat the bread that I'd go with friends and be like, oh, can I come? And then I would just eat the bread that they got for free, and that would be my dinner. And like never actually went out anywhere because I had no money. But it was still amazing. The streets could give it to you even if you have no money. So then after that, yeah, when I got back, that was for like 8 months. And then when I got back to Melbourne, I was like, well, I'm moving to New York when I finish studying, which is what I did.
The decision to go to Paris, the decision was easy, but the finances were another story. So how did you finance the trip, and how did you find accommodation and for it to be legitimate? Because we'll talk about visa issues later.
Well, this is where it started. Yes, this is where it started. I remember having like breakdowns in the middle of my lounge room trying to figure out how to get this visa sorted. And I needed like somebody in France to be my guarantor. And my mum was calling like friends of friends of friends for this random person who could like maybe be my guarantor. And it was just like the utmost stress. So this is where the visa stress started. I guess it's just not my specialty, although I have always made it work. So and then I was just funding it. My parents, didn't give me any money for it. So it was like anything I had just made from work was the money. I was on like 50 euro a week for everything. And it was pretty grim. I was staying outside of Paris and it's called Cité Universitaire. So it's like a university area, but you have to get the RER, like not the metro, out of Paris. To stay there. And it was this grim kind of dorm room place where there was a sink in the room and a shared kitchen. And it was just not ideal, but it didn't really matter. It didn't matter. I was like, I'm here and that's fine. And the school was great.
How about the language?
Oh, terrible, Chris, like deplorable. And I was too busy like hanging out to go to my French 1 class. So, but the thing about when you do exchange, you don't need to get grades. You just have a pass or a fail. So I really used that to my advantage and I just got that pass. But I loved it because it was different. I don't know if this is French, kind of aesthetics in general. I can only speak for this experience, but they said just make beautiful clothing, which is definitely what I wanted to hear. In Melbourne, it was, again, as I was explaining, it was much more conceptual and like deconstructed. And here's a jacket, but how can we make this the least version of a jacket and still be a jacket? Something like that. Whereas in Paris, they were like, we want beautiful clothing. And that is all I ever wanted to make. And I think that's very similar to my art. I want to make like beautiful artworks. And beautiful is such like a subjective word, but I kind of already know the outcome that I want, and then I want to get to there, which I know is like the exact opposite of what you're supposed to learn in university. You're supposed to like get rid of the outcome and just go on the process. So it worked for me and I loved it. I was like, this is what I want to do. I want to like I have the outcome that I want and like get towards that. So it was a different way of learning, but I think really, really advantageous for me to learn at that stage.
Were you doing any realism drawing whilst you were in Paris?
Actually, I sold my first, we had a exhibit or had a show with the school and it was just around the corner from Musée d'Orsay. So I think that's Saint-Germain. And we had this show and I was like, just how fabulous. I'm having a show in Paris. And so it was like, it wasn't a runway show. It was just like we had mannequins and our clothing looks were in this gallery. And I had 2 looks and then I had on the wall behind it a drawing of the looks. So I'd done like the whole drawing of what I was going to make. And then somebody bought that drawing and it was just a random person who came in and looked at the gallery. I think they were French. And so that's funny you ask because I kind of forgot about it, but that was like the first artwork that I ever sold, just not like a friend of friend. And so that was pretty cool.
Very cool.
So it was like, so maybe that was the turning point because nobody really cared about the clothing, but they wanted the drawings of the clothing.
Yeah, that must have told you something.
Yeah, maybe the clothing I was just kind of on par with everybody else, but the drawing was like more standout than the standards.
Probably not enough to pay the rent that week at that stage.
No, I would have just spent it on wine. I would have that took me actually quite a few sales to not just immediately go out and like buy drinks.
But another baguette, at least.
At least, yeah, exactly. Maybe I could shout the baguette this time.
How long were you in Paris, Bella?
Just a semester. So I think it was like maybe 5 months or 6 months. And then I traveled around Europe by myself before coming back. Actually, by that stage, by the end of it, because I applied for like I don't know, like Centrelink, it's called in Australia. So you can apply for, I guess, a grant, like for exchange. Sometimes you get money from the government. So I'd applied for that, and it took until I had finished my time in Paris on the bones of my ass to then get paid. So again, as I said, I just would take that money, go buy drinks. I had no money during my whole semester studying. And then at the end, they back paid me maybe like $5,000. And I was like, whoa, well, good timing. I'm about to go traveling. So yeah, I used that money to then travel.
Where did you go?
I did pretty quick stops with like from Berlin to Copenhagen to Amsterdam and Stockholm, Italy, Portugal, and London. So pretty good little stopover.
Was this on your own, or did you found somebody at this point to do it with?
It was on my own. Yeah. So I think formative. I think always travel by yourself is pretty formative.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And then New York was the next goal, but you went back to Melbourne, did you, in the meantime?
Yeah, went back from Melbourne. I had another, I think, 2.5 years of my degree and finished that. And then 6 months later, I did a trip throughout South America before landing in New York. So it was kind of like a one-way. I did a trip with South America with one of my best friends, and then I went to New York. And my other friend from university met me there, and her and I moved in together.
So this was a girlfriend at the time. You weren't with any particular partner at the time? No,
I was single, yeah. So, yeah, I was single, and then I think it was 4 months after I'd been in the US, in New York, I met Ty, who he is American, and I was really excited that he was American, because often what happens is, like, especially, I don't know if it's just Australians or everyone or every different culture, but you just kind of get stuck with the Australians who have moved to New York City in this case. And so to find an American boyfriend, I was like, yes, I can have American friends now.
You really felt you'd arrived in your next social circle.
For sure. Exactly. How cool, I have an American boyfriend in New York City. Yeah.
Was this impressing your sisters at this point?
Probably always. I'm always trying to impress my sisters to the day, yes.
There's a little bit of rivalry there?
Not rivalry. I think just youngest sibling, me being the youngest sibling, just admiration and wanting of approval, I think.
And you have a good relationship with them both?
Yeah, great relationship. Yeah, I'm very close with both of them.
They're your best friends, are they?
I think so, yes. Yeah, we chat all the time, and I'm still just trying to get their approval. They'll be stopping.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? Being the youngest, that you're seeking that. Were you always seeking approval from your mother or your father for anything particular, or you just wanted to prove what you could do to them?
Yeah, I always got it from them. I'm a Leo. I'm born on August 12th.
True Leo.
Yeah, I feel a very true Leo, and I love and have always loved a few eyes on me, a bit of attention. I like to, as I said, be good at things. So I don't think that came from like a lack of attention. I think maybe it came from like getting used to it. Shamelessly. I was like, this is my currency. I think it's a bit of that.
But Leos are also fiercely loyal.
Yes.
Trustworthy and leaders.
Yeah, I think so.
So always a dynamic, outgoing personality then, would you say?
Yeah, always. I look back all the time. I'm always like shamelessly confident. And so, sometimes I look back at photos and I was like, oh my goodness, like, where did I get the confidence to do that? Like, I maybe just pipe down a little bit, but that has been consistent throughout my life. And yeah, I mean, obviously I'm grateful for it, because I think you need a lot of confidence to, as I said, put my work on the windows, or as I continue to do now, put my work on the internet and say, look at me, what do you think? Like, look at my work. Yeah. So I've always had a lot of confidence, to a good degree or not. I'm not sure, but, I think it's why I can do what I do today.
Does that transfer to the dance floor? Were you a dancer?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Like, again, just looking back, like, come on, just take a seat. So I'm less on the dance floor these days. I just had 2 babies, 2 twins. So, but confidence in raising them. That's feeling good so far.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. You've really taken motherhood by both hands, really, haven't you? Because you need with twins. You need to.
Yeah, for sure.
So, where does music actually? Talking of music, where does that fit in? Did you always have an interest in music? Did you play any musical instruments?
I mean, I play the piano, but no, I cannot hold a tune whatsoever. I don't know any lyrics of any songs, which is a real shame. I like to sing, but I can't, and I don't know the words. So, I mean, that's probably my sign that I shouldn't be doing it. So, no, my family is very musically inclined, not me. It came out in a different way with me. I mean, I love music, but also my music is, I guess, maybe like my style, like my fashion choices. It changes a lot throughout different stages of my life. So I used to be more into like kind of house music and electronic music. And now actually I listen to more like, I guess, not classical, but kind of more soundscape type music. I listen like whilst I'm writing. When I'm drawing, I listen to audiobooks or podcasts. So I'm definitely listening to less music currently than I used to.
What does the lack of a memory for the lyrics tell you? Because if you like music and you listen and over, we invariably pick up some of the lyrics. What does that tell me about you with words? Do you know?
I'm better at making up my own, maybe?
Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know. I haven't thought of that before. I don't think I'm a scatterbrain. Like that kind of sounds like I would be a scatterbrain. I don't know if I would call myself that, but I think I'm honestly not musically inclined. So like I don't listen to music and kind of dissect the different elements of it because I don't know anything about it. I think it's similar to cinema. You know, I don't know anything about cinema. I love films, but I'm not like looking at the camera angles or the different takes. I just kind of take it in. And I think it's probably similar to with music. I'm not like listening to the instruments and then the lyrics and then the melody. Look, I don't even know the words for it, but I enjoy it. But I'm quite happy to maybe sit that one out. That's not my expertise.
Well, you said sports were not for you, music's not for you, but if you were getting up and to dance, you know, because you would enjoy that element of it.
I think I can dance. I'll say that much.
Well, you're going to have lots of opportunity with twin boys too.
Exactly. Yeah.
And what about books? Where do they fit in your life?
I love books. I do a lot. I think I've kind of read the most when I was, through audiobooks lately, especially. So I'll listen. What is so great, and I'm really appreciative of the type of work that I do, is that I can absorb audio. Whereas like if I'm writing or if I'm painting, I won't listen to it. I think I have too many thoughts going on whilst I'm making it. But with this photorealistic stuff, it's quite, I guess, meditative in a way. It's just like I'm following the image and it doesn't take much brain like discussion, I guess. So I can really take in audio. So I love audiobooks and I'm a real advocate, and I have like a few favorites that I put people onto if they don't like audiobooks, because I think if the author can read it, amazing. And then always unabridged. I don't want like characters and music and stuff. I just want like the good novel or nonfiction. I think I probably prefer nonfiction, but yeah.
So poetry, where does that fit, or not at all?
Not really at all. I love good prose, but I haven't really delved into poetry.
You've got a wonderful poet, an Australian poet, just up the road from you in Brisbane, and that's Erin Hansen. Yes. I met her online, so to speak. I interviewed her years ago when she was a teenager, writing poetry in her bedroom in Brisbane, and now she's a very, very established poet, and a lot of her work can be found online at the Poet Underground. Erin Hansen, yes. So if you want to get into poetry,
Yeah.
You could try your neighbour there. What about films? You said you like to watch films. What kind of genre of films do you enjoy?
I wouldn't say I'm a film buff, but what is a good one that I've seen recently? Well, I'm excited. I think the director of Parasite is coming out with a new movie that I'd like to see, because I think that was like one of the best movies I've ever seen. And I am a sucker for a good bit of action, to be honest. Not a Marvel type thing, but more like the Born Identity type of thing. I am embarrassingly a sucker for that kind of stuff.
Well, you've been exposed to a lot of different cultures through your travels, and I'm just wondering what might have rubbed off on you. Let's go back to the journey of your life, Bella, because it's a very interesting one. We're going to get to the visa issue again, because you wanted to go to New York, because that's where we left off when we were telling your travelogue there. How did that actually come about in the end? Tell us the story of that and how it led to where you are now, back in Byron Bay in New South Wales, just south of Brisbane there. But there was a long journey where you got to see quite a bit of the States, and I'm sure a lot of the cultural influences there that have affected your art.
For sure, yeah. So New York City was the spot, again, probably from Sex and the City, maybe Gossip Girl. Was quite a basic teenager, so that. Again, because Paris did it to me first, and I was like, this is incredible how a place can affect everything on a person. And then New York was that every single day. And I was in New York City for, I think it was 5 years by the time I left. I'd been on a bunch of different visas. I tried to work in fashion design. No one would hire me without doing like 6 months unpaid. And again, I was paying my way. So I was like, okay, I can't work for free in New York City. So I was working retail, and then I had a job designing like really, really high-end bespoke curtains, which was kind of, I would at the time call myself a fashion designer, but it was more like a curtain designer. That was that was the only like salary job I've ever had. So I had that for a year, and then I kind of had these other jobs and different visas. And then I was between work at one point, and I thought, okay, I'm going to see if I can sell drawings again. I'm not sure what I'm doing, so I'll just for the moment, I'll just see if I can sell drawings. And that's when I posted on Instagram, I said, I'll draw whatever you want and an A3 size for $100. And then that started it off. So that was about 8 years ago now, maybe. And that's what I've been doing ever since. And so I was in New York for a long time, and then there's COVID, and then that visa was expiring. So in the end of 2020, I was going to move back to New Zealand, but then got stuck, and then was stuck in London, where my sister is. So I was living in London for 6 months. And then Tyler, my boyfriend, had moved to Colorado. So in the mountains in Colorado. So he was like, come here. So then I went to Colorado, and we bought a home there. And this is where I was like, okay, this is the new life. It was pretty jarring. I'd always lived in a city, and now I was in this tiny 2,000 person town way up in the mountains, 3,000 meters. I get confused between 3,000 meters altitude, 9,000 feet, I think that is. So it was crazy high, crazy extreme climate and environment. And so we were there, and that's when I got on this. I was there for about on and off. Again, I was on a travel visa, and then I got this other visa. So I think I was there for 6 months total. But we thought we were very settled, and that's when I got deported. So that was in May 2022, yes. And so we had been in Australia. We actually just got engaged in Australia, visiting family, and we came back, and I got stopped at the San Francisco airport and held for 18 hours. And Tyler was on the other side of the door waiting, didn't hear anything, was with our bags for 18 hours. And then I got sent on this next flight back home to Melbourne with a lifetime ban from the US. So that was the end of my United States. And yeah, and so then Tyler didn't have a US residency yet. Obviously, we weren't planning on being in Australia. So we came back to Australia, and he had to be in the US, or like in the US time zone for work. He was working for like a big tech company. And so then we went to Canada straight after that, because we're like, he needs to be on the time zone. I wasn't an artist, so I didn't need to be anywhere in particular. And then for the next almost 2 years, for the first part of it, we just had to kind of keep bouncing. We were in Canada, then we went to Mexico, then we went to Barbados, and we were like just kind of holding time. And then after a while, we were like, actually, this is pretty good, living different places all the time. And this is kind of a weird opportunity where we have no residency and we don't have to be based anywhere. We're not paying rent. All the stuff we have is like in these bags. So then we continued that and stayed moving around like 1 to 2 months at a time, kind of all around the world, until we landed in Byron Bay and I was pregnant. And that was almost exactly a year ago today. So that's the long story, pretty short.
Well, a lot happened in that time. I can imagine the impact that must have had when you were told that there was something wrong with the visa. It was a technicality of the type of visa that you had, which banned you for life.
It was pretty traumatic, and it has taken me, I'm still kind of getting over it. I didn't think I was being, like, I was very upfront with them. I thought, I've been here for, I think, 7 years at that point. I've never had questioning. Of course, like, it's my turn to have like second questioning. This is fine. I was very honest. The visa was, a company that I set up with a friend, and the friend was an American citizen, and then I ran the company, and then they felt that it was a shell company because she wasn't really involved. And so that was misinformation, which is fraud, which is punishable with a lifetime ban, which I had no idea that you could even have a lifetime ban. I thought 10 years for sure. So yeah, the guy came up to me and he was like, look, I've got good news and bad news. Good news is you're not going to prison, and the bad news is you're bad for life. By this point, I haven't slept. I've been on this like 15-hour flight over. I haven't slept, haven't eaten, have been waiting for another 18 hours. I'm having like a panic attack. I can't speak to anyone. They have my phone. They read my journal. They go into my bank accounts. Like, it's pretty crazy. And then I just had to wait in like a holding room until the next flight back. And then I got the security guards came. There was 2 security guards. They took me through the back of the airport, which I never knew this part existed. One had my phone and my documents, passport, and then they handed that to the pilot, which I think is just really dramatic. And when they handed that to the pilot, I got on the flight, and then we hadn't spoken, but he had booked a flight to be on the same one. So I was like the last one on, and he thought he was about to go back to Australia without me on the flight. The flight was full. They were closing the doors. He's like, she's not on here. Why am I going back to Australia? She's not even on the flight. But then I came on last, and then that was the last time I'll ever be in the US.
Well, how did he know where you were? Because he was the other side of the customs immigration by the time you were held.
He ended up, he called the police. He was talking to everyone around me, like, what do I do? And then I think someone kind of said, this is probably what's going to happen. So the next flight out is at, midnight. That's probably what she's going to do. And so he just took a chance and was like, okay, I'll just get back on that flight. So very dramatic, very traumatizing, but I have made some art out of it, at least. So I've made this book that we have that's at the printers currently, and it's called Visa Issues, and it talks about my story. It also talks about like the art that happened after in those 2 years of traveling was for sure the best art I've ever made. Tyler started working with me, so we have this business together. He kind of does all the business side. I do the drawing, and work really like took off after that. So, it's one of those things like it was meant to be, maybe you could say, or out of darkness will create art. And so the book has the collections, some photos, and a lot of writing. So I've written quite a lot from the story, and then throughout the different places we were and how those places affected the work that I made, and then how it got to where we are today.
And as you said in the leaf of the book, I made art from the beautiful places I resided, yet now I share the accompanying story, the darker underbelly of an untethered life. Is that how you would summarize it?
Yeah, because for those years, I was living in incredible places. We'd get these Airbnbs like on the cliff of the south of France, looking over the ocean, and be there for 2 months, just like absolutely. I was drawing and making these collections, but then it was really difficult work trying to get the food that I had to eat and photograph and draw, and go to the restaurants where I had to collect the ashtrays. And it was like a pretty glamorous life. And it was the reality, but it was because I'd been banished. We had nowhere to go. So, we were homeless in a very glamorous way of, we didn't have a home, but we had like really beautiful places to stay, and we're living a pretty good time, except that I had that darker underbelly of exile.
But look what you got from it in terms of your art, right? And
exactly.
The different cultures that you were exposed to. And all sides of the track.
Yes. So I can't, I definitely wish that hadn't happened, but I'm at least trying to make something good out of it.
So now you're back in Byron Bay. Why did you choose that? When you say you landed there a year ago, why did you actually choose Byron Bay? I can see why, because I've been there. I know how beautiful it is.
Well, yeah, that really is the answer. We were living in Santa Teresa in Costa Rica for a couple of months, and that place I just fell in love with. I was like, this is it. This is where I want to live, but just not in Costa Rica, because when you can't lay over through the US, it's basically impossible to get to from Australia. So not in Costa Rica. So then we're like, could there be an equivalent in Australia? We definitely we always wanted to like have kids and kind of land in Australia. So that was, that's where we wanted to come. Melbourne was the obvious choice because I grew up there, but then we don't need to be in a city. Like, we can work wherever. So why don't we do it in like the most beautiful spot, which I think is Byron Bay. And it's great. There's like, I just love how there's enough. We were in a really small town in the mountains. It was too small for me. This is bigger, but it's not a city, and there's like lots of creatives here. There's a cool kind of buzz of people making and creating and just enjoying like really perfect weather and perfect beaches. And so it's home now for sure.
And there was no issues for Tyler with visas then?
Oh, he did it all legitimately. If only he had done my visas for the US, we would have been fine. But that's I told you it started in Paris. It's just not my forte.
It started in Paris. There's the title of your next book. And now you're full-time then. I mean, obviously raising the boys, those two beautiful young boys, Rem and Ruby. I'm sure they take up a lot of your time, but you do have some help. You have a nanny.
Yes. Yeah. So I did. We both took 3 months off and just raised them for the first 3 months. And then Tyler and I both work on the art business full time. So it's pretty ideal because we just work from home, and obviously the hours are like more than flexible. We can work when we want, but we do have a nanny come and help for a few hours, 4 days a week, so we can just get some work done and then hang out with them. But they're still just in the other room, so it's all pretty ideal. An ideal job to be raising babies for sure. But I love working, so I wanted to be back working. I wanted to start drawing again.
How much of your work is commissioned now, Bella?
Pretty close to zero. I don't. I always kind of humor it because I'm interested in if somebody has an idea that feels like it could take me in a new direction that I like, but it just usually doesn't. So I don't really do commissions. I make original artworks and then sell them privately to clients, and then once they're all sold, I'll usually do a print run, and then those are for the public. And those are all sold on my own site. And Tyler comes from like a design background. He's a product designer for tech companies, so he's great at like all the assets and the site, and everything goes through there. And it's pretty ideal because people will buy the art that I make rather than having to do what they want, which is quite nice.
Yeah, that's often the ideal, isn't it?
Yeah.
Without the pressure of commissions. But it sounds as if you've arrived in the right place for you now in this point in your life, with having young children to raise as well, and in a wonderful location. But often when we look back on our life, we can pinpoint those milestones that were the turning points in our life. And it seems to me yours were very dramatic. Could you highlight those for us?
For sure.
I mean, we knew it began in Paris and, of course, and San Francisco. Maybe there's two cities. But what would you consider in terms of the points of your life when you look at everything that you've done?
Well, yeah, I think when I was in between work, there was this like weird situation with I had just gotten this job and then we were in Mexico and I'd just gotten accepted for the visa, and then the guy was kind of a creep, and it all kind of blew up. And so it blew up the day I got accepted this new visa, totally legitimate. And I was in Mexico, and then he was like, okay, you can no longer work for me, because he was being a creep before that. And I said, okay, we're not doing that. And so that was like a for sure pivotal moment, because I was like, well, what am I supposed to do? Like, I just got this visa and I'm, I can't work for this guy. And so then I just made it work by selling these drawings. And so I think that could have been a moment of like, I don't know, it's very pivotal. That's when I started being like, okay, I'm going to make drawings and make money from it. And I've never looked back. So I think that was pretty pivotal. And that was through Instagram. So that's what's cool about, like, as I said at the beginning, I've gone quite against the typical route of an artist with galleries and grants and awards, and I just have done it through the internet. So without Instagram, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today. And I have like a direct conversation with the people who buy my work, and it seems to work for them. The site is really like well made and like a good online shop that feels, hopefully closer to a Net-a-Porter than a lot of galleries where they don't want to be online, they're all in person. And it's worked for me because I never am anywhere like for a long time physically. So people have to trust buying art online. And so we have to present that in a way that they feel confident at buying it. And so it's I think I've sold art in a I guess a much more contemporary way. Maybe this is the way it's going, maybe not for everyone, but for me it's been amazing. And now I do it with my husband. So instead of splitting 50-50 with the gallery, I split it with him, and that just comes straight back to me.
Yeah, you've really got a good system going there now, and also a very good following on Instagram because you've put the work into it. Yeah,
and they're actual, but like collectors of my work. So it's amazing. I think that was maybe Tim Ferriss or somebody who said you need 1,000 true fans to make a living and to make your career work. And I think I've got that. I think it's not huge, but it's really quality, and the people really, really like the work, which I'm just so grateful for. And yeah, it's pretty ideal.
With that unique journey, I'm wondering what advice you might give to your teenage self, given the experiences that you've had.
For sure, firstly, get a lawyer. That would definitely be, if I could have done it with a lawyer, maybe things would be different. So get a lawyer. And I mean, I was doing it, but I think maybe more people could hear that you can do things yourself, like that you can start. I think starting really, if you want to start a business, you can start really, really small. And like a business is making sales, not spending money to have your the website perfect and the packaging perfect and the marketing and all that. Like I just think you don't need to have all that stuff. You need to sell something. So I feel like I started really rough. Like, I mean, if anyone had bought my work 10 years ago, it was just was like all just so hand done, like at home. I was living at my mum's house. And I think that's how you build something, is like start scrappy, and done is better than perfect. And I've done that like the whole way. And I think people can like appreciate that. It doesn't have to be perfect, but if you stay around, if the product is good enough and you stay around, it'll improve. And then the people who have bought, the collectors who have bought from a long time ago, are now like part of that story. So they have something that was kind of scrappy and rough from the first edit, and now it's better.
So that could be the title of your autobiography eventually. Is it Done is Better Than Perfect, or I Did It My Way?
I would do the first one. Done is better than perfect, which is definitely can't be quoted by me. That's from somebody else, but I Did It My Way. Not sure of that one. Maybe a ballad, maybe a big song.
Maybe a bit of both, yeah. What about your relationship with your family then? It's always been good, and you get to see your parents, though, now that you're back in Oz.
Yeah, yes, yeah. My mum is coming up on Saturday, so in 2 days we're moving. We just bought a house here, so she's coming to help us with moving, and she's amazing, just like loves the boys. And then we're having the whole family here for Christmas, so pretty special.
Nice to have grandparents nearby, right? For the boys.
For sure.
For the boys. So what are you most looking forward to next year then? Because do you have, I'm wondering, itchy feet, even though now you're settled and you're where you want to be right now? Do you still have the travel bug?
Not right now, which is so nice, Chris. Like, it's been such a long time to be settled. We're moving into this new house, so I'm excited for that. Well, I mean, in saying that, we're going to Indonesia in December with the boys, and I do want to travel with them, and I think maybe next year we might go to Europe. But the feeling is mostly really happy to be stable. But so actually, I'm in two parts. I said no, but I think also yes. I do. Also, the work I think is better when I'm traveling. So we'll put it on that. We'll do it for work. It's pretty good, pop it on the business type thing.
Not a bad gig at all.
Yeah.
Well, Bella, keep doing this beautiful, beautiful artwork. The whimsiness of it is just delightful. It really is a treat to follow your journey. So keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you so much, Chris. Thank you.
Thank you for taking time to come on the podcast. It's been a joy.
Yeah, it's been really fun. Look forward to hearing your next ones, and thanks so much.
And I hope you'll check out Bella's artwork. You can find a link in the show notes, of course, to her website and also to her Instagram. There'll also be a link there to our Instagram. And you can also reach us via email if you prefer at hollowellstudios@gmail.com. And whilst you'll find us on any podcast app, it's just the Apple Podcast where you can leave a rating and review. And that makes it easier for others to find the show if you leave a review and a 5-star rating. Because, as you know, there are thousands of podcasts out there from which to choose. And so I always appreciate you taking the time to download and listen to this podcast, and perhaps share it with others who you think may enjoy the show too. And looking ahead, there will be just 50 episodes in Season 2, and after that we'll be taking a break over the holidays, but we'll be back with Season 3 in the new year. So my thanks again to my guest this week, Bella McGoldrick, and to you for listening. I'll be back next week with another episode, so I do hope you'll join me then.